On a grey November day, we came to the Isle of Skye for the Shawl Festival of Small Halls, when some of Scotland's most amazing traditional musicians come together in a kind of folk supergroup to tour around the little community halls and venues on this amazing island. You might have heard the episode we recorded with Rachel Newton, the harpist, fiddle player, viola player, singer, bearer of the Scottish tradition, walking at the fairy pools on the Isle of Skye. But while we were here with all these extraordinary musicians, we thought we'd tell you the stories of two other people who've been involved in this Small Halls Festival. And this bonus episode is about Sue R. Lee, who is a cellist who doesn't come from the normal folk tradition background. She's a classically trained cellist, but she's played a huge role in Scottish traditional music over the last 10 years. And we sat down to talk about her life and her musical journey. Picture the scene. I am sitting on a rock on the Isle of Skye, looking at a river cascading down the hill towards me, and the mountains have snow on them just above it, and behind me the sun has just come out on another range of hills. And sitting on an adjacent rock, I have the wonderful Sue R. Lee with her cello, which is brilliant. Thank you very much for gracing the landscape with us today.
Yeah, a small mar.
You've just been for a run up there, haven't you?
I took a little run this morning. Since it's the
What's
first
it
time
like
I've been
over the brow of that hill?
It's incredible. Literally, as soon as you come over this little spur, you lose the sound of traffic, you lose the sense of anybody else around. It's absolutely wonderful.
Have you been to Skye a lot?
I've been coming to Skye for the last 25 years or so, on and off. I've done various tours. I think the first time I came was really with the Scottish Chamber Orchestra, who I play with. And we've been doing, small Highlands and Islands tours, and that's always during the summer. And Skye used to be every year. We used to come every year, and it's been less over the past few years. We have to share around all the locations.
And so what is a nice, classically trained musician like you doing with all these rambunctious folkies on this tour?
Well, it's actually all down to Mary Lewis.
Right, Mary Lewis, who organises the Small Halls Festival.
Exactly, the artist director. She approached me last Culture Connections with the idea that I could come on this Small Halls tour, and she mentioned the names of the people that were coming, and I know them all. They're all good friends, and I have been playing with many of them over the years. You know, Duncan, Chisholm, Innes, Watson,
Donald Shaw.
I mean, like Jarlath, everyone I've played with over the years. But in fact, just the idea of going around all the small halls and putting together a programme. And I kind of think of all the folkies as being able to just sit there, jam away, never have to look at a chart, barely having to discuss what they're going to play next, and then them all just, jumping in. And that terrified me. It absolutely terrified me. She said, listen, think about it. Gave me the brochure of last year and asked me to think about it. And she nudged me probably once a month for about 3 months.
And then you said yes.
And I finally just
But
thought,
I think it's in the spirit of your character, really, because reading about you, you're somebody who doesn't really see boundaries between different kinds of music.
It's true. It's nice not to be able to. I feel the boundaries often internally, but I don't want to make them a reality.
Will you play a little music for us now?
Sure, yes.
Have you got any sort of the music that you're playing on this tour that you could give us? I noticed you played the Strathspey the other night.
I did. I played a Strathspey for the first time. I learnt it. Yeah, I learnt that. And, well, because we have 2 different iterations. We have 2 quartets. And the first quartet I've been playing with is with Donald, Shaw, Duncan and Innes, and the second will be with Hamish, Lauren and Megan. So this, in the second one, I will be playing actually some classical music. They don't know that with a folky accompaniment.
Right. Wonderful. You're going to play a bit of that for us.
I can also do the Strathspey.
Wonderful.
See, what would you prefer?
Well, why don't you give us the Strathspey now and then the bit of Bach
sure,
afterwards?
yeah.
Yeah. Let me get out of the way. Let me move out of the way.
Sure. That's John Stephen of Chance Inn.
That's a perfect piece to play right here. I want to learn about your life and what sort of a family you come from. Are you from a musical family?
Half. My father's not really musical at all. My mother is musical but doesn't play as such, although she plays a Korean horizontal harp called a kayagum. But I do have two very musical sisters who are professional violinists. One lives in Los Angeles and one lives in Houston.
So how did the music come into your lives? Was it something you started doing very early?
Yes, at school. They offered violin lessons. I have to say I absolutely hated it. I hated everything about it. Like, I hated the sound that I made. It was just really squeaky. And I'd heard cello on the radio. I didn't have a cello for the first couple of months of playing, and I just borrowed it every Saturday. I think that there's something about being denied something like an instrument to make you really want it at that age. So not only did I love it, but I didn't have an instrument, and I remember being able to take home the cello at the half-term holiday because nobody at that school was using it. And it was huge. It was like a half size, and I was about 3'5", and so it's this big monster of a thing. But I literally did not stop playing it for like 6 hours.
So you just fell in love with it?
Absolutely.
What
totally.
is it about the instrument that you love?
It's kind of everything. It's like it's like embracing a whole body of sound. You can really feel the vibrations. Like when I'm doing education work, I do get kids to come and touch the instrument while you play, because actually you totally do feel it. Plus there's something incredibly natural about it, not unlike the violin. For me, the cello is all about gravity.
You're embracing it as we speak. You're hugging it.
Yes, and it's just gravity helps. Like everything is just feels very natural. Plus, the sound is like the human voice.
It sings, doesn't it?
It's the range. It's actually physically the range sits in the human voice range, like right down to you will have singers that can reach the bottom and some singers that can really reach the top. So it really sits in that register, and honestly, I could wax lyrical about the cello forever, because you can play melody, you can play harmony, you can play bass, so there's a lot of possibility, and yeah, I absolutely love it.
And would you play us a little bit of Bach?
I can do that for you too. Oh my goodness, look at this. The humidity's making the bow go down. And see that, it's already changed. Master and Commander.
That was astonishing. Have you played outside before?
Yes, I would say many times.
Under what circumstances?
Oh, so many different ones. I guess, well, the most profound was actually played that piece at the very top of Ben Nevis.
Ah, and I think there's a story behind this, which is a story about your husband.
Indeed, late husband.
Yes, tell us about him, and first of all, how you met.
Oh goodness! So he was walking the Camino de Santiago.
A very famous pilgrimage in Spain.
It is. The end point is Santiago de Compostela, which is in the north of Spain, northwest of Spain, in Galicia. You start in France and you walk across the Pyrenees and you walk across the top of Spain, and it's 500 miles essentially. So he was walking that and was writing a blog, and we were writing to each other during that period. I hadn't met him. He had written his blog because he was raising money for a cancer charity, or two cancer charities. And
had he been diagnosed with cancer at that time?
In fact, he had a very rare form of a malignant melanoma in his thumb, and at the point where he walked the Camino, he had just had his whole thumb amputated. So it was a sort of recovery, and that was in the hope that would be the end of the cancer. And unfortunately, that was not the case. It actually had spread into his central nervous system. So,
and his name was
Gordon Davidson. He was a Royal Marine officer in the early days, then became a commercial pilot. But he was also a passionate musician. He played piano very well until he had his thumb chopped off, and then violin, fiddle, and clarinet. In fact, this is a funny fact. He was in the same music class as Donald Shaw because they grew up in Oban. They were in the same year, yeah.
So the music was a shared interest.
Absolute shared love.
And you obviously fell in love with each other.
Yeah, I think I'd fallen in love before I even met him.
And so how long after that first meeting was it before you got married?
It was quite shortly after, I'd say maybe 9 months, something like that, yeah. Knowing that he had an illness that would, wasn't likely to have a cure, was desperately sad, but I couldn't allow myself to think like that. There's really no choice when you're in love. You're in it because you want it. So I wanted, in some ways, everything about it, and you just take it on because you have to.
So how long did you have together as a married couple?
Only, let me think, it was probably only a little more than 6 months.
Right.
Yeah, very short.
Now, you mentioned that you played that piece of Bach at the top of Ben Nevis.
Yes.
Was that part of your process of grieving, part of your process of remembering your husband?
Oh, there's the reason, it sort of stems back, it goes back to the Camino, really. The piece itself was the very first piece in the first week we met that I played to him. He always wanted to hear that. If he felt low, I played it to him in the hospice. He always wanted to hear that. And actually, on the Camino, he did his Camino. He raised £17,477 for the cancer charities, which is no mean feat. And when he was dying, I said to him, I am going to do this. I am definitely going to do this, and I am going to beat that figure. And so
after his death, you went on the Camino?
Yes. But you meet some tremendous people along the way. And one of the very special man I met, he was very thoughtful, very deep thinker. I had asked him, whether he'd been walking in Scotland. He was a climber. We talked about Ben Nevis, obviously the highest mountain in Great Britain, and I had wanted to climb that at the end of the West Highland Way. And I told him that when I was a teenager, I did the West Highland Way, dragged some friends along. Oh my goodness, we spent the last 2 days of the West Highland Way absolutely soaking wet. We couldn't even put our tent up. The wind, it was just miserable.
Proper Scottish rain.
Proper. And they were miserable. So I actually got straight back on the train with them to sort of cheer them up a bit. And then with really very little money left, I thought, well, actually, I've made a big mistake. I really still want to do this. So I went across London, got on a bus, overnight bus, straight back up. I remember walking up Ben Nevis, and I was walking as if I was a zombie, and I must have got about 2/3 the way up before I just thought, I can't do this anymore, and I just turned around and came back. And it always felt like a bit of a failure to me. And So I'd recounted this story on the Camino to this East German deep thinker, and I'd also recounted the story of, in South America, there was a girl who played the bandoneon who had written Gordon a piece, dedicated it to him for me to play for solo cello, and she'd even got it recorded in Buenos Aires and had sent it to Gordon. And it literally arrived like 5-6 days after he died. So I was gutted about that, like
So
really, he never heard it. And I had sworn that I would play that music or use that music somewhere that was meaningful. So I was on the walk talking about this piece and what was I going to do with this piece. And on the final day, as a parting comment, he said to me, you know what, I'd like you to think about something. And he said, I think you should go up to Ben Nevis. I think you should take your cello and I think you should play your piece to him at the top. And as soon as he said the words, it's like everything just fell into place. I just thought, it all makes total sense. I have to do it. It was at May 11th we went up. There was still snow on the hills.
So were you walking through the snow with your cello?
Yeah, the last 2 hours were absolutely like knee-deep in snow. It's a bit of a struggle, but you're not thinking of it as a struggle. You're on a mission. It doesn't matter. You're doing it anyway.
So you got to the top.
Yeah.
And you put down your cello case in the snow.
And as I approached the summit, I was desperately panicked because there were so many people. Didn't want all these people there. Really didn't want them. It was like a very private thing. As soon as I arrived there, the most magical thing happened. It started to snow. It properly started to snow. As if by magic, literally everyone everything just dissipated. Everyone left. And it was magical, because there's also this magical kind of silence that comes with snow. The sound changes. It's really very grounding somehow. As the snow kind of started to ease, I thought, right, this is it. I'm just going to go for it. And started playing. And literally, as soon as I started playing, the sun came out.
So let's turn back to folk music and talk about how you got involved in the folk scene, because you've played with quite a lot of these musicians in a number of different ways, haven't you?
Yes, I feel very lucky for all, literally for it all. But if I really think about where it stemmed from, I think it really was from the band Mr. McFall's Chamber, which we started in 1996 with 4 members of the SCO. It was Robert McFall's idea. He had 2 sons, or has 2 sons, 2 of his sons, were working in the nightclubs of the Cowgate. And there was one particular club called Transporter Rooms that we had our first outing, and we just thought it'd be great to put a string quartet playing avant-garde classical music at 2 o'clock in the morning.
In a nightclub?
Yeah.
Wow, how did it go down?
It went down like an absolute treat, because basically people were dancing. Can you imagine people dancing to Webern, Shostakovich, and it was just mental. Absolutely loving it. And we loved it too, because it felt completely different to do that, to...
Liberating, perhaps?
Absolutely. And playing to an audience that we never play to. With fairness, a lot of our audiences are definitely not of the teenage 20s variety.
The dancing persuasion.
No. So it really was exceptional. And then it moved from there to a slightly underground venue of the Bongo Club, which was the Bongo Club back in the day in the 90s was a condemned building at the back of Waverley Station. The folky element of it, for the last 10 years or so, we've been playing with, Distill, which is Hands Up for Trad, run by Dave Francis and Simon Tourmé, invited Mr. McFall's Chamber to play as the resident group for basically mostly folk musicians to compose and to try out wonderful, compositions for string quartet, string quintet. And we'd workshop them all and then perform them at the end of the week, and it was a showcase week. And so we've met some wonderful players through that.
Has it changed the way you play? Because, you come from a classically trained background and you're used to having a score in front of you or learning from a score, whereas some of these people are used to making it up as they go along.
Absolutely.
And playing in a freer and more liberated way, I suppose you might say. Has it changed your sense of freedom?
Absolutely. Of course, it's been gradual and with some leaps and bounds. You basically have to hurl yourself into the unknown, and it's kind of the only way. You've just got to hurl yourself in.
In there, like you're doing here at the Small Halls.
A little bit, yes. In fact, a lot.
You're learning a lot of new repertoire, presumably.
Exactly.
Learning a lot of new things that you have to do, being more spontaneous perhaps than sometimes.
Yes.
You look as though you're loving it though.
I am absolutely loving it, and I feel so lucky to be amongst such brilliant musicians while I'm kind of just learning the ropes. That sort of feeling. It's really fun for me.
Now, you have brought another instrument with you out here to the Rock, as well as the cello, and it's in a red case down there.
Yes.
What have you got in the case?
Well, it's my secret weapon.
Oh, is it?
Because you know what's almost so annoying about all these amazing musicians is they not only they're just amazing at what they do, they're amazing at several things. It's not
play
just
lots
one.
of instruments.
They play lots of instruments. They either.
So you need another
so
string to your bow, if you might don't mind me saying so.
I'm not going to let this go so easily. So I have my little secret weapon. I'm just going to put
the cello away. Yeah. It really is a weapon. It's a saw. You've got an actual saw out of that red case.
Yeah.
I mean, is it just a normal saw that you might buy in a do-it-yourself shop?
Well, it's made by a regular saw company called Sandvik. But it is made as a musical saw because essentially it's maybe 50% longer than the average useful saw. But I have actually cut wood with this very saw. I worked with a Belgian dance company called Reckless Sleepers, and we did a project where we basically cut the legs off our own chairs, and then I played.
And then played music with the saw.
Yeah, so I did use it for that, and then
Is it difficult to play? I mean, did you have to work hard to learn it?
No, I'm not. I learnt to play it on Applecross Beach, sitting on a rock.
Well, it's perfect here. You should play, and also you've got a perfect piece of music for us. What are you going to play?
Yes, well, we're here on the island of Skye, so I am long ago days, we didn't have a bridge, so this is the ode to that.
That was amazing. You're actually playing the saw with your cello bow.
Well, I've actually playing it with a bass bow. One because it's shorter, and one it can live in the case with the cello. So.
It's been amazing. Suali, thank you very much indeed for sharing
Matthew.
time with us on Skye.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. It's been a joy for me. Thank you.
Suali on the Isle of Skye. There are more episodes coming soon in season 5 of Folk on Foot. In the meantime, why not go back through the back catalogue and enjoy all the glories of our previous episodes with those amazing artists in those spectacular landscapes. And if you feel like making a donation to help us make more episodes, just go to the Support Us button on the website at folkonfoot.com and follow the simple instructions. We love making the podcast. We hope you love listening to it.